the Muppet Monday that's a week late, so it would seem. Yeah, if you follow my Twitter, then you may have seen that last week I was having some tech issues, so that's kind of why there wasn't a video, and we'll just have to use that footage for another week. If at some point soon there's nothing worth discussing in the week, then I'll use that footage again, but it is a pretty interesting topic, so hopefully it's worth the wait. And I really don't want to have to refilm it again, so let's hope it'll still be relevant soon. But I do appreciate everyone's patience, and thank you everybody who sent me those really nice messages and concerned, you know, comments. So don't worry, this is still a thing that's going on, but you guys have been Fozzie bearing with me, so again, I appreciate it. Ow, waka waka! Also, a huge shout out to the Muppets TV series for getting picked up for a full season! Yay! Keep up those ratings, people, we're doing great. So for this week's topic, this is something that I've actually thought about doing for a while. I am going to present to you my list of all the theatrical Muppet films ranked against each other and why. I've done reviews of all of these movies, in fact that's kind of how I got this whole YouTube channel started, but I never really addressed which ones were like the least bad and which ones were the best and how exactly they compared to each other. And it's very obvious that there are some that are better than others. So, based on my experience with the films and from hearing other people's opinions, here is my somewhat biased but also open-minded list of the top 8 theatrical Muppet films. And of course, that's a joke because there's only 8, but we're basically, again, just going from the, you know, least good to the very best. And just so you know, I'm not really looking at these movies as specific Muppet films. I'm trying to look at them more as actual films that stand on their own. It's more like my opinion if you looked at it as an outsider who wasn't a fan of the Muppet franchise and how much you would get out of it. More of like what the general audience thinks of these movies. So again, just Fozzie bear that in mind. Ah, waka waka! Okay, I'll stop. Anyway, here we go. Coming up at number 8 on our list is Muppets from Space. Kind of an obvious choice since so many people seem to label it as like the worst Muppet film, but me personally, I prefer to call it the weakest of the bunch. A lot of fans agree that it was wrong to give Gonzo's species some kind of identity. I mean, an alien? Seriously? There's a lot about the film that just kind of seems lazy and not well thought out, but actually if you watch it, there are some redeeming factors to it. It does have a lot of pretty funny one-liners, and Jeffrey Tambor is pretty funny despite not really being a very threatening villain. Bobo and Pepe make their first theatrical appearances in the film, and they're actually probably one of the best parts. All in all, this movie is pretty bland and it doesn't offer too much, and the narrative is kind of unfitting. And unfortunately, it's the only Muppet film to actually completely lose money at the box office, so there's that too. But hey, it still had some pretty funny parts and it was mercifully short. Number 7, The Muppets Take Manhattan. Unlike Muppets from Space, this movie does have a lot better jokes in it, and it does have a much more relatable and much more coherent story. And it also has some unexpected turns in it. It does have a lot of great laughs, and you can't help but love the soundtrack because it's so catchy and timeless. The movie also introduced us to the Muppet Babies, so that scene gets some kudos for being super adorable. And also that wedding scene. Yeah, that still raises questions to this day, doesn't it? But if you did watch my review, then you are probably aware that I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. I know a lot of people are really fond of it, but me personally, I just can't get into the whole Muppets are kids graduating from college narrative. I also don't like how naively all the characters are presented, and for the story that they gave us, it really should have been more self-aware of itself. Me personally, I think that this film could have had way more potential if it was more of a legit satire, and also if it maybe wasn't so kid-friendly. This is a film that, for me personally, it just kind of needed to be more edgy and a little more like the first 2 films. It just lacked that zaniness that appealed to both adults and kids. But still, like I said, it's got great music, a lot of good laughs, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it, so I guess it's a classic still to say the least. Number 6, Muppet Treasure Island. Again, not a film that I'm a huge fan of, but it still seems to catch people's attention. I think that what brings people back to this movie is that it's a really, really silly romp on a classic story, and they used to do stuff like that on The Muppet Show, except now it's in movie form. Still, again, there's a lot of really good music, and the characters are cast pretty well for the most part, and also, me personally, I really enjoy the set design of this film. It's definitely a fun film to look at and also sing along with, so there's some good pointers there. I liked this film more when I was a kid, because when I got to be an adult, the humor started to really wear off on me. I don't like all the really random modern day references because they make no sense, and I also really don't like that there's a lot of pandering to the audience just to make, you know, characters dumb, and because they think that that's gonna get a lot of laughs out of people. That's not what The Muppets is about! It also just feels like there's a lot of filler in the movie, so not all the time was used to their advantage very well. But this film does have the best human actor in all of them, Tim Curry. He seriously made this film. He is so silly and he blends right in with all the other Muppets, so it's just so perfect. And he's a pirate and he looks the part even too. It's just, you couldn't have cast anyone better to play the character. Oh well, hello, Long John. That's a sex joke. And there you go. Also, there's a nice little touch of adult humor that the kids definitely won't get, but the parents are definitely stickering. If you can sit through everything else in this film, I promise you, Tim Curry is worth the price of admission. Number 5. Muppets Most Wanted. The best word that I can use to describe this movie is fun. This was a very fun movie. There was a lot of great jokes and laughs, and once again, the music is incredibly catchy. In fact, some of the songs are probably some of the best in any of the films. The human characters are also really likable, especially Ty Burrell. And this movie probably has the best Muppet villain ever, Constantine. He, just like Tim Curry, is kind of what made this movie as good as it is. But in the end, this is also kind of a movie that a lot of people are split about. This movie was actually the first direct sequel to any of the films, and while a lot of die-hard fans enjoy it, and myself included, I do enjoy it, it still lacks focus in a lot of areas, and it does kind of come out being more of the villain story rather than being the story of the Muppets. But to the film's credit, the villain is still insanely entertaining to watch, and again, he is what made the film, but if you're looking for like a clear character arc that you're gonna get attached to, don't expect to see that in this movie. And the one thing that also really gets me about this movie, and I know this is super petty, but it has the biggest plot hole out of any of the films, and it is a huge deal in my book. I'm not gonna reveal it for you here, but if you watch the movie and watch closely in the third act, then you might catch it. And yeah, they kind of got away with it because it was super subtle, and unless you're really thinking about it, you won't catch it, but oh, it just gets under my skin personally. But all in all, the movie is still a lot of fun to watch, and it is definitely a favorite amongst lifelong Muppet fans. Number 4, The Great Muppet Caper. This is another film that fans just seem to love. This movie is probably the most self-aware of all the films, and that's a good thing considering how unique the story is. There's a lot of great gags, both verbally and visually, and there's also a lot of jokes that don't really make sense, but they kind of work because they just add to the absurdity of the environment that they've created. It's another fun romp film for people who just like really enjoy strict comedies. The music, of course, is also really good. It is technically a caper film, but don't expect there to be much of a mystery to it. It's more about like the Muppets getting into shenanigans more than anything, but that's also what makes the film so enjoyable. A lot like Muppets Most Wanted, this film has found more of an audience with the die-hard fans, but you know what? Caper has also found some fans with some, you know, semi-fans too, so it definitely gets a really good pass. Number 3, The Muppet Christmas Carol. I have mentioned before that this is probably my personal favorite film, but I will admit it is not the best film. This movie, even though it's not overly funny, it's still one that really pulls at your feels. People have actually said that this is one of the most faithful adaptations to the Charles Dickens novel, thanks to the narration of Gonzo throughout the film. The characters are all cast perfectly. Michael Caine is an amazing Scrooge. Again, music is beyond wonderful and it makes everything sound like Christmas. I really do think that this is a great film to introduce to people who are not familiar with the original story, especially to kids, because it does such a good job of just sucking you in and also helping people create just a better understanding of how important this story is. It is mostly dramatic, but it has some comedic moments in just the right parts, and because they're so rare, you actually appreciate them even more. I mean, what can I say? It's just a really good film. It has a really great balance to it that's never awkward, and that's personally how I like my Muppet films. So a little biased, but still at the end of the day, as far as arcs and just the balance of the whole environment that they created, I really do think that it is one of the better films. And yeah, probably one of the best times of the year to enjoy it is during the holidays, but let's face it, that's when it's gonna pull at your feels anyway. Number 2, don't kill me, but The Muppet Movie. I know, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this, but just hear me out. This was the very first theatrical Muppet film, and it actually ended up paving the way for the formula that would end up getting used in a lot of Muppet films. It tells the origin story of how the Muppets came together and traveled to Hollywood to make it big, and in my opinion, what really makes this movie so great is how much heart was put into it. Aside from all the technical advances that had never been done with puppets and television before, it's also just a really fun road trip movie. There is a very threatening but also insanely humorous motivation from the villain that all of our heroes have to fight against. A lot of great surprise cameos show up in the movie. There's so many unexpected jokes and turns. I mean, the fourth wall humor is probably some of the best from any of the movies. And the music by Paul Williams is some of the best, so it's really understandable why this movie is #1 for so many people. And it doesn't just have the best Muppet song, but it also has my personal favorite song ever, Rainbow Connection. Someday we'll find it, the Rainbow Connection. Oh. So I know, a lot of you out there are probably like, well then wait a minute, why is this one not in the #1 spot? Well, as much as I really do love this film, I'm sorry to say that I am a little off-put by the motivation from the characters. I know I talked about this in the review, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but what I don't like is that the characters do all say, we're going to Hollywood to be rich and famous. And they do say that they're gonna go to make people happy, but their first instinct is to go be famous. Yeah, I'm sorry, but if your motivation is kind of shallow, then it's a little hard to sympathize with you. But other than that, the movie's really fun, and it's cool to kind of imagine how the characters met each other. So, again, I totally understand if everybody likes this film. It's just that I think that that one part just doesn't, you know, fit a #1 spot. But again, I still completely understand why people love this film and why they keep coming back to it, especially because it's so nostalgic for some people. So, yeah, besides that, it really is one of the best things the Muppets have ever produced, so it definitely deserves the #2 spot, no question. If not the #1 spot by some people's standards. And if you are a Muppet fan, then you should know what's coming next. The #1 spot for this list is 2011's The Muppets. Again, just hear me out. I really did think hard about this one, but at the end of the day, I do think that as far as like an overall movie, this is probably the best Muppet film. And you know what, actually no, I shouldn't be saying it's the best Muppet film, because if we're gonna judge specifically on the Muppets and their history, then yeah, maybe the Muppet movie should have been the #1 spot, but like I said in the beginning, this is more like judging the movies as a whole on their own. And if that's the case, then I think this is the best one. And the reason why I think it's the best, besides it just overall being a really great film, at the end of the day, the character arcs just kind of seem to work the best. You get completely invested in Walter and Kermit's arcs, and even though it does focus heavily on Walter, the new character, you still completely go along with Kermit's journeys as well as everyone else's journeys as we progress. And unlike the Muppet movie, you really do feel for these characters because you buy that they're more depressed about the fact that they're unable to make people happy, and that's why they want to save their theater so that they can make people happy again. And also, of course, to save their theater because it holds a lot of nostalgic value to them, but you know, we get that. But again, you completely get lost in their journeys and want them to win, so when they hit the struggling points, you really feel for them. And of course, what also makes this movie so amazing is all the Muppet nostalgia that just makes all these great references to like the olden days, but it's also really fresh and new for people who have never seen the Muppets. As per usual, the music is insanely catchy and wonderful, and I mean, one of the songs even won an Academy Award. The movie is light, it's over the top, it's completely aware of that, and it doesn't apologize for it for 1 second. There really aren't that many complaints with this movie, except for if it had maybe just one downfall, then it's probably that the movie can be a little too sweet. And not like in a really sickening kind of way, but in the kind of way that you do want the Muppets to be just a little more edgy. But you know, aside from that, you still completely go along with it. And again, yes, that's why I understand why people would prefer the Muppet movie, but that does not change the fact that the Muppets is still insanely heartfelt, and for some people they even found themselves crying at the end of the film. And yeah, even if the ending is a little predictable, you still can't help but feel so good once it turns out the way that it does. You can pretty much show this movie to just about anybody who's not a diehard fan, and you know they will still enjoy it. And that is why, in my opinion, this is the best standalone Muppet film, because it can be enjoyed the most by pretty much anybody. And also, I would just like to point out that Rotten Tomatoes does have the highest rating of all of the films films by a long shot, so I at least have that to back me up. So there you go. There is the list I was able to put together that ranks the films from the least good to the best. And you know what? If you guys don't agree with me, then that's fine. This is really just kind of my opinion at the end of the day. I'm not like the voice of the Muppets or anything like that by a long shot. So I still want to be fair though, and if you guys do agree with me, then that's awesome. But if you don't, then how would you guys rank the films? Well, be sure to leave me a comment below, and also if you have a different order that you would put them in, then be sure to list them for me. I'd love to see your opinion as well. And of course, as usual, just be sure to let me know if there's anything specific that you want me to address in the next Muppet Monday. And finally, I want to close this video out to encourage you guys to definitely watch tomorrow's episode, because I think it's safe to say this now, but this is the episode that they were filming when I visited the set. So, as you can imagine, I am so pumped to see how it all came together. Not gonna tell you anything right now, but unless they change anything, I am pretty convinced that it's gonna be a fantastic episode. Plus, Denise is showing up again, finally, and Miss Piggy is gonna do a song with Christian Chenoweth, so how can you possibly go wrong there? Did it! That's all I can say for now, but I will post a vlog with all my thoughts and critiques on Wednesday morning, so just be sure to come back and check for that. Thank you so much again for watching, as always, and please be sure to subscribe to my channel and my vlog channel, and I will see you guys again real soon for some more reacts, reviews, and Muppet Mondays. Bye, Adorkable Buddies! Bye!